everyone, my name is Alan and today I'll be talking about auth. So first things first, can someone tell me what's wrong with this image? Yeah, you're right, that's not him, right? So in this case, if the slide deck was actually correct, right? People in the crowd would say, hey, who is this guy? He shouldn't be there. But now, imagine if this was the internet. How would we be able to disprove his identity, right? If he's in the chair, he's probably the right guy. And now since he's there, he has authority as Lara's co-founder to present to this crowd. So that's auth. Authentication is about proving who you are, and authorization is about what you're allowed to do. And why it's important ties back to the 5 pillars of information security. I'll just breeze through them. It's confidentiality, integrity, availability, non-repudiation, which means that you can't deny that you've done something, and authenticity, which means an entity is what it claims to be. So that's going to be the main one that we're focused on today, but I want everyone to have this in the back of their minds because auth is relevant to all 5 pillars. And also as an aside, since the CIA tells us why we have auth in the first place, risk is a big factor telling us which auth to pick. So alongside other things like friction and cost that I'll also cover, I want you to really think about risk today. So how we choose an auth can help us treat risk in a different way. And just quick overview, super potato diagram. We're looking at the authentication mechanism and then the session mechanism. So let's get started with auth. So the most basic way to authenticate someone on the internet is with username and password, right? So if you know the username, you know the password, you have to be the account owner, right? These are all the times that my Microsoft account has been breached. So yeah, so that's not me, but they successfully guessed my username and password. But how'd they do this? Well, unfortunately, other companies get breached and people like me reuse their passwords. So you can see I've been involved in many data breaches, but they're not even related to Microsoft. So we have to design with this in mind if we want to use username password. So aside from this, there's also more complexity since we have to implement more things by ourselves. So really, when would we ever want to actually implement username password? Name of the game is going to be control and ownership. When we build username passwords by ourselves, we're in full control of our auth stack. We don't have to rely on any other identity provider, service, or the way they implement things. Our users also allow themselves to have siloed identities. They don't have to log in with Google. They don't have to link it to anything else. When our app is completely standalone. So it would make sense in a couple cases like this, let's say a banking app or a password manager. But now, let's do a fun little demo together. So picture this, right? I'm a bad guy. This is a health app, and I'm trying to log in to get some sensitive information, okay? I have a list of a bunch of leaked emails and password combinations. So let me just start going through my list. Okay, I'll try Alice, invalid email or password. Let me try Bob, and I'm getting the same error. But did you guys notice the difference between the two? No?
One took longer?
Exactly right. So if we put them side by side, I'll show you exactly what the difference was. So I'll put it side by side. I'll open up the network tab. Again, I'm going to type in Alice's email. And that took 23 milliseconds. I'm going to type in Bob's email now. 210 milliseconds. Well, what does that actually tell us?
When you're comparing the characters of the password, if the password's longer, it might take longer to compare.
No characters match.
Not quite. So oh, yes.
It means Bob's email probably registered.
Yes, so it's exactly that. So with this, timing attack. Yeah, so with this, we're actually getting info. So since Bob's email took longer, it means they probably were computing the hash for that password. And that's why it took longer, right? So just from trying out some random stuff, we found that Bob has an email in this very sensitive health portal. And with this, we can do authentication enumeration. So it means across my list, I can just try to log in with one email, one password combination. Even after that, I'll have a list of all the clients if I go here. And from there, I can use more sophisticated attacks to try and log into their account. Or maybe that information in itself is valuable enough. Like maybe this is a mental health portal and I found that a celebrity has their email registered here. Like that's super valuable information. That's an information leak. So how would we fix it though?
You add some buffer to make it always the same.
A buffer. There's an easier way though. Can someone think of an even easier way? I'll give you the, who's this? I'll just give you the answer. We can just always hash the password. So we always compute the hash even if the email doesn't exist. So simple as that. Right? I'll continue now. We can improve on username password though, just by implementing MFA. I'll speak on this briefly. So with MFA, what we're doing is we're adding a factor, and this is allowing us to mitigate risk. So mitigation of risk is going to be one of our risk treatments, right? We're just reducing the amount of risk by introducing a new factor. So now you can't only just know the username and password, you also need to have SMS or the email or the authenticator app. Another concept I want to hammer home is the transference of risk. So by using an authenticator app, for example, you're transferring some risk to the authenticator because they have to do their own implementation. And that's providing more defense for you. So I'll do an example with the email OTP though. So let's say I have my Roblox account and my username password has been leaked. So someone tries to log in, but I have 2FA. So what do? They go to my email, they try to log into that. And what do you know? I reused my password again. So they log into my email. However, I was using Microsoft, and even though they knew all of my information, Microsoft's anomaly detection still blocked the sign-in. If we go back, we can see the first two actually didn't go through. The last one did, but don't worry about that. So, you can see that they used anomaly detection. They found that, well, I've never been in that location, I don't have that device, and it was at an odd time. So they decided to block the login and alert me. So without even doing anything as a provider, I've given my users more security because now they can also use the email provider's security as well. So these are just a couple more common measures. Some of them are going to be non-negotiables like hashing and salting. But what I wanted to talk about more is when security costs friction. So the more that more controls we add, the more the user has to do, the more they get annoyed, right? There's more to do for them. So how do we handle this? So we have to think about our own risk appetite. Now that's how much risk we're willing to handle, how much risk we're willing to allow, as well as how much friction our users are willing to have. I'll use UNSW as a case study though. So UNSW, they mandate a passphrase, they mandate using authenticator app, and they force you to rotate your password every few months. So as you know, UNSW alumni, this is super annoying, right? But still, they're using sensitive information like on the UNSW. So I understand, but also as a user, what am I actually going to do? Am I gonna move units just because this is annoying me? Like, no, I just have to deal with it. But you might not have that same privilege as a developer, right? If there's too much friction, then users might just go somewhere else because they're being annoyed, they're being spammed by MFA prompts. So it's just another thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about how many security controls you decide to implement. You can't just keep piling them on. Now let's talk about more modern implementations. So passwordless is the way to go. We're completely avoiding the risk of leaking a password because there's no password to leak. And I'll start by talking about magic links. So the way they work is you get sent a link, you click on it, and you're on their webpage, you're authenticated. Like that's it, right? Super simple, super low friction. You don't have to worry about passwords. So why isn't everyone just doing this? Answer is that it's a single point of failure. If someone has access to your email, then that's it. They have access to your webpage. If someone intercepts the magic link, they consume it, that's it. They have access, they're authenticated. So there's also no fallback as well. It's not generally best practice to use MFA of this in general, but when would we still use it? It can still be useful, right? So I'll go through one of these examples, but it's when the engagement already lives in the inbox, so it's just convenient, it's short-lived, or the information really just isn't that sensitive. So I'll go through a newsletter one. Let's say you send users an email for a weekly paid newsletter. All they do is they click on the link, they consume it, and they're on your webpage, they're able to read through the newsletter. Very simple, right? What's the worst thing that could happen if someone actually managed to take that magic link and authenticate? Like you have your payment details, right? Let's say your card. But the thing is, we don't actually have to give read permission. So let's say you store your credit card on there. We can just let you see the last 4 digits of your credit card. That's what they do on receipts anyway. So it's completely fine. What's the worst that could happen? They pay for you, like that's it, right? So it's really about when it makes sense to use. And that's what I really want to hammer home in this presentation today. But the better version is going to be SSO. So single sign-on is just one account used everywhere, right? So we've probably seen this before with Google. You initiate the auth flow by having your users log in with Google. Then you get given, as a developer, a couple of tokens and you handle that. That's it. So again, no passwords. You're transferring risk to the identity provider because they're handling the login process. And it's just also low friction, super easy. You might be thinking why this is different to the magic link since it's also a single point, but there's a big difference when it's an identity provider as a single point than say an email inbox. The identity provider like Google, they spend how much money working on security controls. And also you can still implement MFA, so it doesn't even have to be a single point. You get low friction, you get a smaller attack surface. It just doesn't make sense to not ship SSO with most apps. Moving on from that, what I want to talk about most is passkeys. So passkeys, in my opinion, is going to be the future. So this is probably the most secure way to implement passwordless logins. So with passkeys, your device would generate a key pair, but the private key never actually leaves your device. So I'll go through it. Private half never leaves you. You log in, the server sends a challenge, your device signs it with the private key, which is protected by Face ID, so you have multiple factors as well. You need the device and you need your biometrics. And then that's it. It's super easy, it's super secure. Like, why would we not use it? We get to own the entire auth stack as well, right? But the reason is, your users exist in the real world. So if they lose their devices, they might lose their passkey. They might not be able to log back in. And then we have to worry about convoluted recovery methods. They might be authenticating with their MacBook. So it would sit in iCloud, but then use an Android phone. So that introduces more friction that we have to think about. So the tech is there, but the ecosystem hasn't quite reached there yet. So that's the reason why not everyone is introducing passkeys. But it's not even hard to implement as a developer. So I will talk about the how a little bit here. As a developer, you literally just need to worry about 3 operations from the FIDO2 spec. The OS, like the Mac Apple, it handles all the hard bits. All you need to do when a user signs up is register them by storing their public key and a credential ID. And then every time they log in, all you need to do is generate a challenge and then verify that challenge against their public key. It's very simple. And I'll go through an iCloud keychain sync example, right? So this is the way that Apple does it. So they don't actually need to keep it locked to one device. You can back it up against multiple devices automatically. As a developer, you never have to worry about that. So with iCloud, you generate your key pair on one place, and then you can encrypt it and sync it to the iCloud. And the way that it's encrypted is actually using a key that's derived from both the iCloud data and the iPhone. So that means that even if your iCloud is hacked, right, no one's going to be able to use the key because they also need your physical device to get the actual passkey. So that makes it so that the iCloud is not a single point of failure. You need both things. So it's about as secure as it gets. And you don't have to worry about a single thing. So just to recap architecture as a whole, if it makes sense, you can use your magic links. If it's short, it's low stakes, things like that. Otherwise, if you really, really have to implement username and password, you should start thinking about the controls that you also implement, such as using MFA and whether you should mandate it or not. It should generally be there as an option already. And then single sign-on, this is probably the most preferred right now because pretty much everyone is going to have a Google account or something like that. Even if you're using username and password, should probably be offering it as an option. And then passkeys. So you can offer passkeys, but it's not, I just showed you guys, it's not too difficult to implement. And for the users that are really security minded, it will be great for them. But ideal world, you can use single sign-on, so you don't have to worry about passwords at all. And that's your fallback, that 99.9% of people will be able to use your website. And then you allow your users to also use passkeys. But once you're through the door, how do you actually stay authenticated? So what keeps users signed in? Like, what even is being signed in? And how do we log people out? Well, the answer is going to be session management. So this is a second big part of auth. Just a quick checklist. Tokens, they're just a random string or symbol. Opaque tokens are random bytes that the server has to interpret. Signed tokens have actual data that's important, like claims who this person is, that the client can read. And a session is a series of user interactions within a given period. So if we're authenticating a session, it's going to be a series of authenticated actions within a period. And there's 2 ways to handle this. It's either going to be stateful or it's going to be stateless. So we'll start with stateful. With stateful, the server's going to mint the ID, like session ID. It creates it, it gives it to the client, and then it stores it and hands you back a cookie. So every time you make a request over HTTP or whatever it might be, the server just goes and looks it up. So it's completely centralized. It's one source of truth, and you're able to very easily log users out by just revoking their token, right? Super simple. And the thing is, this should actually be the default on general. And I'll tell you why. So you can also have observability. So you can track every single session at all times. Another pro, right? Next, it's actually really scalable. Like for example, the create T3 stack, it uses Stateful, and it'd still be scalable up to about like 2,000 requests a second because it's caching with Postgres. So it creates the session table, it indexes primary key, and then every time you make a request, it's just hitting that cache. So it's still scalable to like that many requests. And even if you do need to scale further, you can just migrate over to Redis. So with that, you just store the session ID as a key and you'd have the user info as the value. So every time the user makes a request, you hit that Redis cache, which is even faster, even scalable. Scales even to say Canva size, because you can always just deploy a cluster of Redis caches, right? So you can use this pretty much whenever you can, but specifically you can use it when it's a monolith and when a few services can share an auth. But by default, you should be using Stateful. So what is stateless and why shouldn't we write it off after what I just said? Well, with stateless, the token is the state. So that means that the server's not tracking any sessions at all. It's looking at what the client gives it with the token and it's saying, okay, that's my source of truth. And the way they do this is by relying on signed tokens. I'll talk about JWTs later though in my demo, but the main issue with these is that they cannot actually be revoked. The idea is that since the server doesn't track them, we just have to let them expire on their own, which can be problematic, right? We can't actually log people out. When you log someone out with stateless, you're just clearing their token from the client. But that token is still out there in the wild. So if someone could get a hand on it, they could technically authenticate as you. So best practice is to make them really short-lived, like they live for 15 minutes, and to pair them with a longer-lived opaque token, always known as a refresh token. So you store that in the database, and every time your short-lived token expires, all you need to do is generate a new one using the refresh token. And you're able to revoke the refresh token, which stops people from being able to generate more tokens. So from being able to forge tokens, right? But when would we actually use stateless? Well, for deployment constraints is one thing. So if you're serverless, if you want to ship fast and have it scale automatically, because you don't have to worry about scale in this case. And where it really shines is with microservice architecture. So you have your auth service, right? It's going to hold the private key. This is what's going to be used for issuing. But every single microservice can just use the public key, can cache the public key from the auth service and verify whenever they need to on their own terms. So that's when it shines best. But let's go through my second demo. Okay, so I have a login page. Let's see what happens. I'm going to go through. Okay, so it looks like some type of notes app, right? Could definitely be some sensitive info here, but if I'm just this user, it's a little boring. So let's do some investigation, see what else there is. So a bit of recon. You can always look at the Roblox txt file to see if there's anything disallowed from scraping agents, and boom. So there's an admin login. Let me just try that. So, okay, so this is the first time we're gonna see authorization things. So I'm a user and only admins can log in here. Pretty simple, right? So how could I possibly become an admin? Let's take a look at our cookies since we talk so much about it. And we can see that there is a JWT being used. So let's dissect this. All it is a free base 64 encoded string. So if I decode it, I can see exactly what's happening. So a JWT is composed of three things, right? The head, which tells you what algorithm was used to encrypt it, and then the claims. So we see this is my username, this is my role, and this is when it expires. And then this random string, can someone tell me what this random string is? Yep.
Is that supposed to be the secret?
So this isn't actually the secret, it's going to be the signature. Yeah, so the signature is created by getting these two together, encrypting it with the secret, and that's what you get out. So it's going to be useless to me. So that's the main reason why we can't forge tokens, because we need the secret. So what could I try and do? Well, what if there was just no secret at all? What if there was no algorithm? If I make this algorithm none, I could technically forge a token by switching this to admin and just dropping the signature, right? Why don't we try it out? So I'm gonna let me just copy this somewhere. So I'm gonna get the first string, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna base 64 encode it. Oh my God. Okay, so there we go. We encode this. Cool. Remove the padding. So that's our header now. And it'll be separated by the second string, the claims. So let me go ahead and encode this, drop the padding. And now since our algorithm is none, we have no secret. So I'll quickly show you what our string would look like now. It's supposed to look like this. So it's that simple, right? Why don't we go give it a go? So I'll go back here. Here's my JWT. I override it. See what happens. Refresh. Oh, and I'm logged out. It looks like it didn't work, guys. So clearly they've accounted for algorithm none, right? Because that would be pretty bad to keep it. But what if I just go back and I just tweak the header just a little bit? This might look silly right now, but bear with me. What if I just add a capital N in none, right? Like, you may as well try. That's all we're here to do. I remove the padding, I grab that. And so now I have a new string. Yup. So why don't I try this? See what happens. I'm gonna refresh. Guys, I'm logged in. I'm admin. Isn't that crazy, guys? I'm actually admin and I can do bad things now. Wow, 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 wow. Just from that. And now you might think that's a bit stupid, but it literally happened. So Auth0 is a massive identity provider. So they use Auth as a service. So big companies were trusting their implementations. And they shipped this error twice actually. And they also actively maintain the JSON Web Token library on NPM. And they shipped the error as well. So the irony is that when you build logic yourself, it's really easy to make silly mistakes like this that end up costing a lot. So that's why generally, if you're shipping quickly, it's better to offload to someone else. But still, gotta keep in mind, your supply chain might be doing stuff like this. But yeah, that's the end of my presentation.
Questions?
Yeah.
I guess other than reducing friction, is there any other benefit to using a magic link?
Magic link? Well, again, it's completely dependent on what you're doing, right? So I'd say friction is going to be the magic link's best, like the best feature. Because all you do is click on it. There's no real other benefit, I guess. Like maintenance would be a thing, like you don't have to worry about username, password. And it's also super simple. So I guess you benefit from lower maintenance, lower complexity of implementation. Yeah.
I also wonder how the vulnerability happened, because I thought we'll have like a safe list of algorithms or based on.
Right, yeah. So what these guys did, what Auth0 did, is since they're an identity provider, they wanted to give their people the opportunity to use their own algorithms, right? But if you didn't pass in an algorithm, it would allow for none. And the reason it allowed for none is because instead of doing a whitelist of, say, good algorithms, they actually implemented a blacklist. So they blacklisted none in complete lowercase and capital none instead of say like none to lower. And so that's how the vulnerability happens. So something as small as that led cascaded to affecting every single one of their users. Yeah.
So like OTPs that get sent to your phone, do they fall under MFA as well? And did that any different to like the email service?
So OTP, let me go back. OTP by itself with no username password?
Yeah.
If it's OTP by itself, it'd be most closely related to the magic link because it's only one factor. And now you are transferring some risk to your mobile provider because there is still things that could go wrong. So I'm not sure if you heard of the SIM swapping. So what this happens is someone would call up your mobile company, they'd pretend to be you, pretend they lost their SIM, and then the mobile provider would give them a new SIM. And so this happened for a lot of people and it let them bypass MFA. It would let them bypass OTP in this case as well. So it's just another attack surface to go through. Yeah.
Maybe like quickly on the recovery side, like what's the best way for users to recover the password? Like what checks do you go through?
Well, best practice is generally still going to be a magic link because say you sign in with a username password with an email, right? That means that you're trusting that the user has the email. So there's a reason why it's still best practice, but still, I just talked about how we could go wrong, right? So that's why moving towards passwordless authentication is really going to be the future. Like once the ecosystem gets nailed, passkeys are going to be everywhere, say in like 20, 30 years. All right, sweet. Love it there.